We have episode 4 of Market Movers with Jesse Facer of the RDS Group, specifically Porsche Mainline. Welcome, Jesse.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming by. I do these things all the time, and I like to showcase my friends, and I always say I'd like my friends to win. And that's really what I believe, so I'm just thrilled to have you. Of course, we have a lot of rapport going way back, so it should be a good time. So let's just get right into it. Tell me about how you got interested in, obviously, selling cars.
Sure. So for me, my journey started at a very young age. My grandfather owned a independent repair shop in Kennett Square, where I grew up. And there was videos of me in diapers running around his shop covered in grease, just kind of how I grew up. So naturally, I was interested in cars. And then, throughout my teenage years, I was your typical, had a loud, fast car and thought that, it was the coolest thing that we could do. Stayed interested in cars, went to Penn College of Technology for their automotive program. That was where I thought I wanted to work on cars. I actually did work at an independent shop prior to going to college and thought that I wanted to go the technician route. In college, kind of realized that it was more of a hobby than a career as far as like the technician side of things. So got out of college, came home, had some odds and ends things. And then, a friend of mine at the time, very close friend of mine, family owned a car dealership. And he said, hey, you want to try sales? And, you have the personality for it and obviously the mechanical background for it, so maybe it'd be something fun for you to try. So 19-year-old me is now selling Jeep Dodge Chryslers, learning the business in and out that way, which it was definitely a different way to learn this business, with the dealership I worked at. Did that for about a year and a half with them. And then from there decided I wanted to change a pace. So I started working for a Nissan Subaru store in sales.
Okay. Yep.
That was fine. High volume store, got to learn another aspect of the business at that store. And then just felt like I was killing myself with the hours. I mean, it was, I was 21 years old. I didn't really have anything else to do. Right. So I was like, let's work. So I worked 9 to 9, basically 6 days a week. Never took my days off, just kind of worked all the time. But that led to a pretty quick burnout.
Sure.
So they found out that I had a mechanical background and a tech background, and I was about to quit sales actually. And they gave me an opportunity to become a service advisor. They were like, hey, it's kind of a mix of service and sales. I think you'd be good at this. Do you want to try this before you throw in the towel and call it all together? Because I was really good at sales at that store. I mean, I was a 20, 25 car a month person at that store. So it's not like I was just a being at a desk there. So they wanted to give me another opportunity. So, it was a blessing in disguise because I didn't really think anything of it. The hours were much better, different pace. You get a little bit of a base salary plus your commission you make on it. So it wasn't as much of a grind to have 100% commission like sales was. So I did that for about another year or so.
Okay.
And I'll never forget, it was a Saturday. I was working and we had, it was a high volume store. It was a Nissan Subaru store. So you're doing 100 cars a day through service, which is just insane.
Right.
And Saturday is supposed to be 2 advisors, and I got stuck by myself because the other advisor called out. And I'm running around like an absolute maniac trying to write up all of these cars on a Saturday. And something clicked in my head where I just thought, there has to be something better than this. Like, there's no way that this is just what this business is. So I actually got my resume together and I sent it out to every high-end dealership in the area. So Porsche, BMW, Mercedes, I think a Lexus store as well, just to see if there was any bites, And what I did too is, I've always been pretty good, I think, at navigating people and situations, which I think is what makes me good at sales ultimately. I didn't just submit an application and drop off a resume at a store. I actually emailed the service manager at each of the stores with my resume attached. And I opened up the email saying, I don't know if you're hiring, but if you are or are in the future, I would love an opportunity. And I feel like that just kind of changes things a little bit, just shows a little bit of drive, I guess. it just so happened that at Porsche at that time, one of the other sales guys, that's one of my coworkers now, was the sit-in service manager because they were in between service managers at that period. And he's the one that got my resume and my email. And, with him being a sales background, it was kind of funny. He saw my sales background and then service and was like, I have to hire this kid. Yeah. And so I walked in there, 22 years old and interviewed with a bunch of people, and next thing I know, there I am.
How long between when you decided to float resumes and when people started calling you back?
I got an email back from him within a few days.
So
I was pretty much out of the Nissan store within a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did everybody get back to you, or just a couple people, or just Porsche?
The Mercedes store did, and they said they just weren't hiring at the time, and otherwise it was just Porsche. And if the others got back to me, I don't know, because I committed to Porsche very quickly and made that decision.
Well, I mean, that's a big step, right?
Yeah,
to go from a
huge.
Subaru store to a Porsche store. And, because I see the guys that come in to your dealership and they start at the bottom and kind of work their way up, so that's a big deal.
Very funny part too about my interview day at Porsche. I'll never forget. I feel like it was yesterday. It's been, it'll be 12 years in June, or July, July 1st. When I walked in for my interview, I'd worked at all these like generic dealerships, the service counter and everything's kind of like dirty. There's nothing that's like put together, it's not like Porsche. Let's put it that way. And the day I walked in for my interview, I remember them pointing me, the receptionist, Terry, that we all know, she pointed me in the right direction of the service department. When I walked in there, I thought I was in the finance department. Right. I actually almost turned around to her and said, I'm in the wrong department. Like, I'm looking for service. Because even just their office looks so different.
Yeah, the service department is so different at your dealership than many, many places.
Yep. So that was kind of funny. And then I ended up being there for, I think it was almost 5 hours. I interviewed with the service manager, the parts manager, our CFO, and then ultimately the owner, all in the same day. Not expecting that. I was there a long time, and then a couple days later, I got the offer from them.
I guess they were really hiring that day. They had all those people lined up. To meet with you
it was just kind of a random scenario,
and it worked out.
Yeah. It was. I mean, those people are at our store pretty much every day. So that's one unique thing about RDS versus anybody else is, I can walk into these people's office and talk to them every day, which is something else you don't get at a lot of other dealerships. It makes it, the best place to be.
Right. Yeah. And you created your own luck there, right?
Yeah.
So you were always interested in sales, right? Because you got to sell. You got to sell people, I assume, a job. Like if their car has a problem, you got to sell them on why they should fix it and, or should they buy another car, or what that decision point is. So, I mean, service plays a really big focus. I mean, I recently had a car that I bought from another dealership, and I went into the service department. I was very upset because I told 4 people that I hated the car, and nobody introduced me to a salesperson.
Wow.
Not one person. Wow. Could you imagine that? Like, if I walked into your place, I'm pretty sure that if I told Dave, I'd be like, Dave, this car is just not cutting it. I just don't like this or don't like that. Hopefully he would send me to you
He'd
right
probably
away.
say, well, go talk to Jesse.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's right around the corner. Yeah. And I walk into your place and they're just like, hi, Mr. Simmon. And they just let you go kind of wherever. Yeah. It's a whole different experience. It's a different experience. So you did Dodge, you did Subaru, now you've done Porsche.
Yep.
And what took you back into the sales then? Because now you're selling the service and everything and working with the customers directly. How did you then flop back into sales?
So kind of another random scenario. So I did service at Porsche for almost 8 years as a service advisor, and during that period, I grew some pretty strong customer relationships and had kind of my people,
Sure.
And pretty much got to the point where every single person that walked in our door, I knew who they were, you just, because you see them more than anybody else.
Sure.
Not necessarily just for bad things, but regular oil changes and checkups and everything. And my goal has always been, at the end of the day, just to do the right thing for people.
Sure.
Kind of like you say, you want your friends to win. when my clients come in, I'll tell them, hey, your brakes are at 4 millimeters. Your warning light's probably going to come on, but you don't have to do them today. Just call me when the light comes on. And I think that goes a long way with people, instead of, I've even had the scenario where I've had my car in at another dealership for service. My wife drives a Jeep now. And, there's times where it's just like a very cut and dry scenario of like, you need brakes. Okay, well, what do they measure? Yeah. Why do I need them? And it's just, I don't know. The technician told me you needed them. Like, that's not an answer.
That is not an answer. You're right. Yeah.
So it's just, taking it as an approach to dealing with people and not just numbers. So ultimately grew my business as a service advisor and my reputation and everything. And it was our CFO at the dealership, who I've, met at the dealership, but him and I had mutual friends before that. That we didn't know. We kind of put 2 and 2 together after I started working there. And so him and I, became, pretty close, and I still look at him as an important person to me. He, about 3 years into me being a service advisor, started to put the sales thing in my head.
Okay.
He kind of said, like, you'd be really good in sales. You should do it. You should make the move. He's like, well, we'll get a spot for you. And just kind of teasing me with it almost. And my biggest thing, quite honestly, was I just didn't want to work every Saturday.
Yeah, you don't want to work 9 to 9 either.
No, of course not. Which that's the other side of our dealership is we have normal hours.
Porsche Mainline doesn't. They're closed at what, 5, 6 o'clock?
Yeah, 6 o'clock. Yeah. Yep. So the biggest thing was the Saturdays. I didn't want to work every Saturday. Yeah. So I had said no to him for years. Whenever he would bring it up, I'd be like, no, I'm fine as a service advisor. I'm happy with what I do. Yeah. Like, no issue, whatever. And then ultimately, when I had my first son in 2019, when Troy was born, I realized, the Tuesday off, or when you get to pick between Tuesday and Thursday to be your off day during the week when you're in sales. Okay. And so I was like, you know what? Having a weekday off actually wouldn't be terrible. With having a child, because you can take them places and not have to deal with the crowds and lines and everything like that. Yeah. And things just changed in my life too. I mean, not to say that being a service advisor became stale. It wasn't that at all. It was more so just I wanted to change a pace, and I knew there was an opportunity there. So I finally decided to take the dive and make the change and see where it took me. And now I can say it was the best move of my career. I mean, it was.
So I imagine you're super happy there. And
100%.
You've been there now 12 years, you said this year?
Yeah, July 1st.
And you're selling, they allow you to sell other things there too, though, because they have so many dealerships.
Yeah, as long as you have the competent knowledge of the brand, we are allowed to cross-sell with our other stores. Okay. I don't do a ton of that, but it is nice to have something pop up every now and then where I have one of my clients who's a big collector and they want something other than Porsche. We pretty much, they've grown that dealer group into basically being able to offer anything that somebody wants. Yeah. Which is phenomenal.
You got Lotus, Ferrari, Lamborghini, Ineos now. Yep. What am I missing?
So it's Porsche, McLaren, Ferrari, Lamborghini, Ineos, BAC. Oh yeah. Lotus. Yep. And then out west, we're tied in with the Newport Beach Auto Group that technically has Koenigsegg and Bugatti as well.
Oh wow. So if I want a Bugatti, I can call you.
Try.
I'd have to try really hard. Yeah. I would have to try to fit in a Bugatti.
Yeah. They're actually pretty roomy, believe it or not. If you drive your Cayman, you can drive a Bugatti.
There you go.
But yeah, so that's kind of the cool thing is, I'm not tied down to just one situation, one spot. I have a very good client of mine who's bought several Porsches from me, and I've also sold him a Huracan Dorado, and I sold him a 750S McLaren as well. And it's, with us, we really want to garnish our relationships with our clients. So, for sure, if you have a relationship with that person and they are your person, then you should be the one seeing through all the deals to all the different brands.
Yeah. So, my father-in-law was in the car business forever, and he told me about this guy that would literally get a new Lincoln every year. Yeah. But he was like, and this was back when he was like, I think he was an AMC dealer at that time. Yeah. Yep. Maybe the 70s or something. Yeah. So this guy liked him so much and he took care of him that he would just have him go buy a Lincoln for him.
Yeah, exactly.
and show up at Miller's and buy this Lincoln. So people trust people. I mean, in the car business, you have to trust people.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Same in my business.
Well, and
right?
it's hard to find people to trust. You know, I always say there's not a lot of good eggs in the car business, but when you find them, you have to keep them close because you got to stick together in your group of good car business people.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's the same. It's the same in my industry. Yeah. It's the same in my industry, which is really interesting, right? Because you get a lot of, especially with some of the stuff you do, you get a lot of personalities and a lot of people, and obviously with car things the way they are, they're tight. Yep. It's not easy to get some of these cars even post-COVID.
Sure.
And in my world, it's the same thing. It's not easy to get some of these houses. And ultimately, in my world, a relationship with another agent will put my client over.
Yep.
Will put my client over the edge. And I think it's similar with you, right? Because your relationship with the client might put them over the top
100%.
on, dealing with the higher ups that decide what goes this way and what car goes that way. Yep. So that's good to know. What is your biggest takeaway through that whole process, right? Because whether it's cars or houses or sales or service or whatever, right? I just believe that there are sales being made every day, every conversation, right?
Absolutely.
So what's your biggest takeaway from, ostensibly, for lack of a better way to put it, like you were very good at sales, you were very good at service, but you kind of failed at sales in a way, right? For lack of a better way to put it. You were good at it, but you failed in the fact of you failed to manage your work. Yeah. Right. That's a big lesson, right?
Definitely.
So what's your biggest takeaway as you go through that process? Do you feel like that was, I heard you say a lot that it was like, well, this just happened and that just happened. Do you feel like it just happened to you? Do you feel like you made those switches or those choices, and what did you learn?
So I feel like, time and place, everything.
Right.
Everything has a time and place. And I think sometimes maybe we feel like it wasn't in our control, but maybe it was a cumulative course of events that got us there. Subconsciously you're making decisions every single day, and maybe those decisions are what leads up to that big decision. For me, quite honestly, I think a lot of it was just making the right decisions at the right time. I never had a roadmap of how I wanted to get to a certain point, now that I'm getting older and I've been in the business a little longer, I can define a roadmap of what my future goals are. And, this is stuff, though, when you're 20 years old, you're not really thinking of. You're just kind of going with the flow. I think everyone went through that phase of life where you're just trying to figure things out. And, kind of like my 2 real estate dealings that I've done, which I'm sure we'll get into, I think it was just right place, right time, making the right decision, and just trusting that you're making the right decision, even if it scares you. Right. Because honestly, I was terrified to go back into sales. Really? When I moved from being a service advisor to sales, I was so nervous about going back to 100% commission at a dealership where I know the people have been there for a very long time and they have their book of business and their clients. And a lot of their clients were also my clients because of my service years. So I had to navigate that a lot, obviously.
Yeah, that sounds tricky.
So there was just a lot of layers to it. And I was honestly terrified to make the move. I ultimately figured it out and it worked out for the best. But I mean, there is, the ultimate takeaway is I think just everything happens for a reason. And who knows what that reason is sometimes, but a reason nonetheless.
So I'm how many years older than you? I'm 5-7 years older than you, something like that.
I'm 34.
So I am 13 years older than you.
I act older than I am.
You're friends with my brother-in-law. Isn't my brother?
He's older. He's older
my brother-in-law
than me.
40?
Yeah, he was 5 or 6 years older than me.
40. Yeah. Okay. So I thought you were his age always, but anyway, the point is, I always looked at this. So I've been self-employed forever now, so it's going on. It's 20 plus years. So, and I spent very little time in any kind of corporate world. But for years, people would be like, hey, you're doing this. And I wake up unemployed every day. I don't get health insurance. I don't get 401k match. I don't get paid vacation. Like if I take vacation, it's vacation, right? It's actually a cost on top of the vacation. But then now that I'm 47, I have a lot of friends in their early 50s, and they had different jobs. And I've been lucky enough to do what I do at a pretty high level. So my friends and neighbors have nice corporate jobs, but I'm seeing them like in their 50s now, and some of them are doing things like buying franchises and doing all these different things. And then these guys that went corporate are looking back and saying, "Man, what if I had started my own business or worked for myself or whatever that is." So it's interesting to see that you made that transition kind of back and forth, a little bit. And I was 1099 for a company for a bit, doing high performance coaching and everything, which I still do a tiny bit of. But like even like I was in that, and that was great. I don't mean to badmouth it, but anyway, but I was just like, I had to show up to like meetings and I had to like, even if you're a 1099, you have to like toe the company line on things and stuff. And I did that like 15 years into not really ever doing that. So that was difficult for me, and I don't do that anymore. And ultimately that was like, I felt as weird doing that as I guess my friends feel that maybe are starting businesses now. So, and then you started another business as well too.
Yeah, my wife and I own a business as well. Yeah.
And what do you do there?
So we own a Sunny Day Play Cafe in Kennett Square. It's like a children's indoor playground essentially.
Cool.
So, when my son was born, my wife, did have a normal job at that point. She was a manager at a doctor's office. And, we did the typical, I think, first child weighing out the pros and cons of daycare and cost and everything. And
taxes.
It just made more sense for her to stay home than to work.
Go to work.
Obviously, it was a tough decision. But also, we'll still both agree that it was the best decision that we made for our kids. To have her be able to stay home. And fortunately, she was able to stay home, because of what I had already been creating at that point and the, kind of rock that I'd planted where I was. So it was an easy decision overall. But then, after 4.5 years of being a stay-at-home mom, I think she was entertaining going back into the workforce. And, she always had this, dream of having a play cafe or indoor playground or something. She had talked about it for years before we actually moved, and made the decision to do it. And, again, a time and place scenario. I had moved into sales, was very nervous about it, ended up having, at that point when we opened the Play Cafe, I'd already been in sales for 2 years, and they were the best 2 years of my career. And so ultimately we had the, financial ability to open the business, and we kind of just said, we're young at that point. I'm 33. I said, if it fails, we have plenty of time to recover. So let's just give it a shot. And now we just, October 24 was our 1 year anniversary. So we're a little bit over a year now, and everything's still kind of firing on all cylinders there. But it's crazy. It's kind of made me better at what I do at Porsche every day too. Looking at things from an owner perspective now. For sure. And having the appreciation and respect to our owner, what he's created, the platform he's given us to succeed, and the size of the business. I mean, I do what any business does, but on a very small scale. I mean, our Play Cafe is only open part-time. It's not a huge full-time thing. I mean, it's a lot of commitment from us. My wife does a lot of the odds and ends of, the marketing, and you have to do everything as an owner, you got to do everything. Somebody calls out on a weekend, weekends are our busiest because of the birthday parties and events. For sure. Somebody calls out, one of us has to go there. I could all week be looking forward to my Sunday off, and then Sunday might not be an off day. You got to go to the Play Cafe. I can relate. Yeah, exactly. So that obviously opening that business put a lot of stress on us as a couple, and overall, I mean, it was very difficult. And I didn't take any time away from Porsche. I mean, I still had a best. Each year that I've been in sales has been better than the year before that, which I think is obviously a very important thing. But I didn't let the Play Cafe interfere with that. I still ended up having my record year of my career, even working there till 1 o'clock in the morning every night, getting the place built and ready and open. And it was very hard. I mean, 2023 was probably the hardest year of my life. But for the better.
For the better. Well, now Caitlin has the Play Cafe and everything.
Yep.
I'm getting ready to hopefully toward the end of the year launch a 22 home subdivision in Oxford.
That's awesome.
And I'm hoping to do something with you where we could do a Play Cafe to
Sure.
drive some people in there, maybe rent out your cafe or something and pitch some people on some of this development while their kids play on your stuff or whatever, because I think it's going to be young families.
We did this with the new Kennett Square apartments that just opened when they were, gauging interest in getting people to try to sign up for their leases and rent their apartments. We gave anyone who signed a lease for the apartment, they had like a Kennett Square package deal. So like local businesses chipped in and gave, we gave a couple free play passes plus like 10% off a membership if they signed up for a membership at our place.
Nice.
And the leasing agent was giving that out to everybody who had signed up. So we're definitely open to do stuff like that to get more people in.
So you work with people and do design and you can like spec out these cars that you sell. So there's a crazy level that you generally don't do at the Chevy dealership.
Correct.
Right. So so you get a window into some of the stuff that we do, especially with new construction. But what does it look like? What does it look like to you? So like you're doing all this car stuff. And you've got some houses. Tell me about your first house and your second house. Sure, too, right?
I sold the first house to buy the second house, but I have done 2 purchase deals in my life. So my first house was a very good learning process for real estate for me.
All right.
It was in Newtown Square. We bought a townhouse. Was our first house that we bought. When we moved in, we knew that it had monthly HOA fees and all of that stuff, which I was fine with. I mean, I didn't want to cut grass or do anything, the place was kind of like a live-in flip scenario. It was totally livable when we bought it. But you always want to make things nicer than when you came in. I ended up pretty much redoing every inch of this place. Like I think we lived there for 2 years, I want to say. Yeah, a little over 2 years we lived there. But the whole time we lived there, I was doing projects. It was my first kitchen rehab that I did. Biggest learning point that we had from a real estate perspective was shortly after we moved in, we actually found out about it almost at closing that there was stucco remediation happening in the neighborhood.
That was big in that neighborhood.
Huge.
Huge. Big deal.
And it was basically like a couple days before closing that we found that they're requesting everybody to pay like a $10,000 assessment towards the
That was it? Only
stucco.
10?
Well, plus the increase of monthly HOA.
Okay.
So we were already stretching to buy this place at the time. I wasn't doing near what I'm doing today overall. And so we were like...
Did you pay the 10?
No.
I was going to say, because special assessments are due at the time that they're levied, not so even if you have a special assessment on a property and someone's trying to sell it to you and say they made a deal for $500 a month, they're supposed to pay off that balance because that belongs to the seller, not the buyer.
Yeah, so I didn't know any of this. Luckily, our real estate agent that we had, she's phenomenal. She's sold, me my 2 houses, and then my in-laws have bought all their houses from her. She's big in the Kennett Square area, and she really helped us guide through this process.
That's a big deal.
Huge. So we find out about this assessment, and me and my wife, we were already like, we want this house. We were super excited about it. It was our first place together. And we loved the location, the setup of the house. I mean, we looked at probably 20 houses before we made a decision on this one. Yeah. Because this was pre-COVID when you could actually do that.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. You could actually look at houses and decide which one you wanted.
I mean, I can't remember there were days, and this is going to sound crazy to people because now it's been like, I said to my wife the other day, I said, the internet memes of like Coronas in a refrigerator started like now 5 years ago.
Yeah.
5 years ago. That's crazy, right? But yeah, we would go and I would be in a subdivision and I would like, well, let me show you all 5 that are for sale that are the same model.
Yeah.
The same house. And one was just different than the other. And you're like splitting hairs. Now it's like, oh, you want to buy in that subdivision? Okay, let's try and get someone to sell it.
Right. You have to like convince someone to sell, right?
Yeah, the clients actually don't even know that the houses exist because they start online and they don't know that neighborhoods
Yeah.
exist. You
Yeah.
can't look at neighborhoods anymore.
Yeah.
You're just looking at like whatever's there.
Sure.
But anyway, so you're into this deal.
Yeah, so like we're very excited, and then I'll never forget the day that I got a call from my realtor, and she said, "Jesse, we have a problem." And I was like, "What's that?" And she goes, "Well, in everything that's come up, we're getting ready for closing. There's a special assessment for the stucco." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" Like I know nothing
what does
about
that mean?
any
Yeah.
of this. And she said, "Well, the coming up right after you close, they want $10,000 from each resident to put towards the stucco remediation, and the HOA fee is going to go up by $280 a month."
Yep.
I mean, we had a heavy HOA in there as it was before the assessment.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, is there any way to figure this out? Like, I'm fine to do it and figure it out. I don't have another $10,000,
Right,
You
yeah.
know, and so she went to battle for us, and ultimately got the seller to pay the $10,000.
I'm glad you didn't say you would pay that. I'd be like, Jesse.
No. Again, but I was relying on her. This is stuff
Yeah.
I know nothing about. Just like somebody walking in my dealership and not knowing anything not even understanding that you can order a car. You know?
Right, yeah. I mean, look, I see agents that don't know that special assessments are due at the time they're levied, not when they collect them or whatever.
So that all went down. We figured it out. $10,000 was paid. We didn't have to put any more money out of pocket. I did have to deal with a higher HOA payment, which was fine. I mean, so we bought the house. We also got a very good deal on the house. Good. I mean, compared to what I even sold it for and what I know they're selling for now in that neighborhood, I mean, everyone that's been in that house since me has won.
The neighborhood looks phenomenal.
It looks great. Yeah, with the remediation, they did a great job. And they used good materials.
Yeah.
They did redo some of the decks as well as part of it, which was huge.
It was all needed.
We had some rotting wood on our deck, and all that got replaced during the remediation. I didn't have to pay for any of it, so it was all fine.
It's in the HOA fee now.
Yep. So ultimately, that happened. We moved in, bought the house right where we wanted to buy it at, number wise. I went through a full. I'm like, I hate paying anybody to do anything. Personally, I try to do as much stuff myself as possible. I'm starting to shift that mindset a little bit because now I'm starting to understand what my time is worth.
Correct.
There was a long period of my life where I just didn't understand what time was worth, and now I'm finally starting to get that. But like I did a full gut kitchen remodel by myself that townhouse while my wife was 8 months pregnant.
Yeah, I mean, I remember replacing I did a couple of houses before I got that lesson, but I replaced all the floors in like 3 houses myself, like with nailers and stuff. Yeah. Like I couldn't even do that today.
Yeah.
But I remember when Jennifer and I bought our first townhome together, I bought a new lawnmower. In this townhome, you had to mow the lawn. And we had this like end lot, and it was shaped like a pie, and there was a circle. It's just like I had a lot of grass to cut, actually. So I went out and bought a new lawnmower. It was August, and we're in this house.
Yeah.
And I mowed the lawn, and I come back in, and I was just like head to toe, like sweat. Like, I was like death. Yeah. Because it was August, and it had this hill. And I was like, holy moly.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and Jennifer said, wow. It looked like that was you done. I was like, yeah I'm done. And she goes, well, okay, good. I had bought this brand new lawnmower, this brand new trimmer. And I said to her, I said, well, this is 2004. So I was 31 or something. Yeah. And I said to her, I said, well, I met the neighbor, Anthony. I said, he has a really high opinion of me. She goes, oh, how do you know that so quick? I said, well, I gave him the lawnmower and the trimmer.
Oh, wow.
I'm calling a lawn service, and I'm never mowing a lawn again.
So I actually right about the same age, around 31, I went through the same exact thing. I said to my wife, with me moving the sales, I was just so busy all the time. Yeah. And I just didn't want to, like, I already feel guilty not spending the time with my kids that I want to because of the job. And I was like, I don't want to spend another hour away from them every weekend. Like, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up. And so I basically did the same thing. I one day just was fed up, and I hired a lawn service, and I haven't mowed my grass since. And I gave my mower and trimmer away to one of the lot attendants at Porsche who just bought a house.
Here you go.
I was like, here you go. Happy move-in gift.
So, I mean, I get it, right? Like people say to me like, hey, people tend to think I have this like huge open schedule, which technically I do. But if I don't do the work, like I'm going to get nowhere. Like I don't even have, like, I don't really like, I don't have all customer acquisition is through me. It's not
Sure.
like Remax doesn't like hand me customers,
Yeah.
right? So
You don't have people just walking in your showroom like I do.
well, yeah. So I'm totally on my own, and I have no qualms about that. I'm just saying, like, I don't have like an open schedule where I don't work a lot, but I'm so good with my time now. It may appear like I'm not doing a lot, but you get to a point where you're kind of like, it's not balance. It's more like flow.
Sure.
And you get really good at figuring out when you have to and when you want to and this and that. So like the other day, Becky missed the bus and I was like, man, I got all this stuff to do. And I was like, Becky, you can't miss the bus. Like, it's just enough for me to be here to get you ready for the bus, my daughter, Becky. And so I have to drive her to the school.
Sure.
And it's a huge hassle. But like on my way back, I was like, you know what? Like if I worked for like AT&T or something, like how would like Becky would have been sunk this morning. Like how would I do this? Or I'd be trying to call somebody or whatever. Or if I just decide to drive Reagan to high school in the morning, which I sometimes do, or just pick her up from track, it's like I got to work hard to get that into my schedule and everything and figure all that stuff out. But I have the ability to do it. Whereas when I grew up, you know, I couldn't do certain extracurricular activities because there was no way to do it. So that's the beauty of freedom involved in that. So I could see why you want that. Well, the car business is different where, you know, you have hours, but you have some freedom.
But we have flexibility. I mean,
today.
as long as you're, you know, performing and doing what you're supposed to do, there is a lot of flexibility that's available.
Nobody's going to ask you what you're doing.
I mean, I try to respect that as much as possible.
For sure.
You know, I mean, I'm still very much I try to appreciate what we have there. You know,
100%.
Obviously, like I tell everybody all the time, I don't do anything different than anybody else. I just have a pay plan. I know how to work it, and I know how to make the best of it. Anyone can do it. It really is. Anybody can do it. And because of that, though, I do respect, you know, especially from that business owner perspective, I respect the platform that we've been given. I mean, if I was still working at Dodge, my life wouldn't be what it is today. You know, we have something very, very different at that store and that group that makes us so unique and so different that it gives me the ability to be who I am today. So I try to keep that in a respect situation. And, you know, there's a lot of people that can come and go, and I could do it if I wanted to, but I try to work most of my scheduled hours and be there, you know?
Like, I think guys like you and me, like when the work's there, we're just going to do
100%.
it.
You're going to
no matter what.
I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a workaholic. I can't help it. It's just nature of me as a person.
I think the trick is to like, so in the years that I've coached and trained and mentored agents, like, so they'll have like one deal, right? And they'll be busy, but it's because if this was their deal, they would flip it over and do it some more and flip it over and do it some more. But so like, you know, so you can make yourself busy doing a lot of
But is it actually important?
Right. So like you do the important stuff, you get the deals done, and then, you know, you get really good at figuring out, okay, well, there's work now. So let's get it. And maybe when there's not work, you either maybe need a little bit of a break or you're trying to create the work that you need, you know? So in my world, it's all about creating the work that you need. That's just, if I do that every day, the work itself takes care of itself.
100%. Absolutely.
You know?
So back to my townhouse.
Oh yeah.
This was, so I've told you and, you know, conversations you and I have had that like, I've always been intrigued by real estate. It's just, you know, I don't know that I'd want to do it full time like you do, but it is a very interesting thing for me. And it's something I do want to, you know, I want to have properties when I get older and investments and stuff.
You should have properties when you're younger.
Well, it's stuff that we're going to talk about. I got a lot of stuff going on if you haven't figured that out yet.
Never a perfect time.
But there definitely is some stuff we'll be talking about in that aspect, hopefully in the coming years. But what really struck my interest in it and kind of like confirmed it to me was when we were selling our townhouse.
Right. Yeah.
So I lived in it for a little while. Obviously, my agent had known what the house looked like when we bought it. And then when she went to go sell it for us, it was a totally different house.
Oh, for sure.
It was right before COVID market. I mean, our closing on our house we currently live on was the day before the shutdowns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we were in the closing, like wearing masks, not knowing if we should share pens. Like it was the weirdest thing. And the next day, the world shut down.
Yeah, I did. I did one of those. The builder that I bought this house, they called me up, and I was at my house in Florida, and they were like, "Are you closing?" I was like, "I'm absolutely closing."
Yeah.
But I went to this closing. We did it outside.
Yeah.
And I was at my house in Florida, and we did it outside by the bar, by the pool.
Yeah.
At this little table. We had a bar and restaurant next to the pool.
Sure.
And I remember I brought my own pens and gloves.
Yeah.
And
we had the gloves on.
Yeah. And I brought my own pens. Yeah. And then the lady came, and she went like,
oh.
starts doing this with the papers. I looked at my wife. I was like, I'm gonna die.
Oh my gosh,
I was like,
that's funny.
The lady's looking at the papers. But yeah, so you did that.
So
the
basically,
day before.
What happened? So when our realtor and I, you know, we've known each other forever through the family and stuff like that. And when we went to go sell the house, I kind of knew what I wanted to sell the house for. And
right.
You know me enough already. Like when I want to do something, I pretty much just do it. And there's not really. For me, I have to figure out the hard way.
Like
I'm trying to get
trim in my car.
Yeah, sure. We'll get into that. But like there's certain things that I think just have to be a certain way, and you know I'm trying to get better at not being that way. But you know I think it's a good characteristic sometimes.
No, you have to advocate for yourself.
Yeah,
you
and
have to.
I have no
advocate
shame
for
in
yourself.
doing that. I have no problem doing that. So we sat down. I'll never forget. We sat down in the dining room at the townhouse because I said, "Hey, we want to sell. We want to buy a single family home. Let's figure this out." So she came up and met with us at the house one day, and we're sitting down in the dining room. And I remember her pulling out her pamphlet of information, and it was all the comps that she researched and this and that and everything else. And I kind of just let her do her thing. Okay. And she goes, "Okay, so I think we should list it." I think she wanted to list it at like 265.
Okay.
And I was like, that's a little light. And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "I want to list it for 290.
Yeah.
And she's like, "You're crazy. You're never going to get 290 for this house." And I was like, "Well, the worst thing that could happen is it sits around a little bit and we don't get any action and then we lower it." But I'm in the mindset right now of I know what I need to pull out of this house to be able to have enough money to buy the next house.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay, let's just list it at 290 and we ended up to 289,990 or something like that, you know, whatever.
Which makes no difference.
Whatever, exactly. But I was like, let's just put it out there. And she kind of gave me the, okay, like if that's what you want, we'll see what happens. And I said, it's going to be fine. Trust me. We sold the place within like 3 weeks for full asking price.
Yeah.
And this was before like things went crazy. Now it gets more complicated, which you've probably done a million of these deals, but the buyer for the house that committed to it had to sell their house that was contingent upon them selling their house. And
that helped you get a little bit of extra money.
Definitely.
Being able to take that term.
Well, it also helped me in
get
my situation too, because then we had committed to the house that we're in now, and that was also contingent on us selling our house.
Wow.
So there was 3 layers to this. I'm getting all the money for the townhouse, which was the best scenario. We ended up working out a deal with the person that owned the house that we're in now. They had already built their new house, had moved out. This house had been empty for a couple months already. And we weren't even thinking about moving back towards home. Like we wanted to be in the Westchester, Newtown Square area. Obviously, pricing is much different up here.
Sure.
So we were going to settle for a little bit less house to be in the area. And our realtor lives out in Landenberg. She's in Kennett Square. That's her prime target area. And she basically forced us to come look at this house. She was like, "You have to come look at this house. Trust me." And I remember pulling up the drive. Caitlin was still working at this point. So she's working. I have my son Troy with me. And I took a day off of work during the week to go meet her and look at houses. And we pull up the lane at the neighborhood, and it has, you know, it's a Ryan Homes development. And, you know, I didn't grow up in a house like this. You know, like I never in my life thought that I'd be able to buy a house like the house we have now. And we're pulling up the street and I see all the kids out playing and the sidewalks. And my wife did grow up in a neighborhood like this. So she had been telling me, if we buy a house, it has to be a neighborhood like this. It has to be. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't understand what's so special about it. And I just remember so clearly driving up that road and just saying, okay, I kind of get it. And I'm looking at the houses and I'm like, does she really think I can afford one of these houses? Like,
Yeah.
you know, like,
Yeah, exactly.
I never
how
in
am
my
I gonna
life,
do this?
you know?
Yeah.
And we pull up to the house, and I swear, like, before we even walked through the house, I was like, this is it. Like,
Sure.
we're good. We'll buy it. And then we end up doing the whole tour and everything, and everything was good, and it worked out. But she thought I was crazy for doing like the double contingency, asking 30 grand more than what she wanted to list it for. And it all ended up working out, and everybody won. The people that were selling their house in Springfield, they had this really beautiful stone historic house. And like their realtor did like a magazine article on the house, and they also ended up getting full asking price for it, and it all worked out for everybody. And then I ended up working out a really good deal on our house because right before COVID, they already had their new house. I stole the house that I'm in now. I mean, and we love it. But it was funny, after everything settled out, after everything was signed, everybody moved, I get a call from our real estate agent, and she said, well, that was a lot of fun. If you ever want to get into real estate, give me a call. And that's when I was just like, okay, I did something good here, you know?
That's interesting.
And then obviously, like my house now, we bought it at the perfect time, and it's appreciated significantly based on market conditions. And so like in my mind, I'm like, great. Again, time and a place, a reason for everything. I think I've done pretty well in real estate so far.
Yeah, I mean, like it's the tough thing from our perspective as agents, especially those of us that have been around for a long time, is the market hasn't faltered in any way since 2013.
Yeah.
So you think about 75% of the agents right now haven't been in the business since before 2013.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, there's a lot of expectations that may change at any point.
Sure.
And it's just real interesting to me to see what happens, with this stuff. Like I got a call yesterday from an agent, and she said, on this property, and she's like, are your people sure on their price? And I'm like, well, okay, you haven't shown it yet.
Yeah.
Number one. Yeah. Number two, they've been on the market for, I don't know, 26 hours.
Yeah. Well, that's like when someone...
And number three, have you looked at the comparables from the neighbor? Do you know anything about the neighborhood?
Sure.
She's like, I haven't looked at any of that. I was like, what is this phone call about?
Yeah.
So
that's funny. It's like what you just described is exactly what happens with us when we list some special car in our pre-owned inventory, and we'll get calls from all over the country within like the first 24 to 48 hours. Okay. And everyone says, well, I'll give you this for it. And we're like, we just listed the car. I'm not taking $10,000 off the asking price.
Yeah. That's funny.
But it's funny. It's like the same scenario, different object.
Right. So in some of these cars, people get emotional. Like I will do real estate deals all day. Like I'll buy a house in like Myrtle Beach this afternoon. Never even seen it.
Yeah.
Like that's not a thing for me. But I'll spend like an hour in your office trying to figure out which shade of red I'm trying to put on
and let me convince you to put the different options in the car.
Yeah, and then we'll put wood in it, and it'll be that. So I mean, that's the point of like the confident, and consultative advisor.
Yeah.
So. There's a lot of that to this business, and that's really something that I enjoy. I know you enjoy it.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting time to learn about you. If someone is looking for specifically a Porsche or any of the stuff that you guys sell, how do they find Jesse Vaser? Where are you findable?
So, I mean, ultimately, our website, everyone's listed on the website. I do have a little bit of an Instagram following, RDS Jesse. I think everyone knows
Jesse.
that. But I do, it's funny, I actually do a pretty good amount of deals through Instagram.
You do?
Some of my big clients have come to me through Instagram.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's very crazy.
That is interesting.
And no one else at our store really does it.
I noticed that.
And it's one of those things where I'm also not as active on it as I should be. I think this year one of my focuses is going to be being a little bit more active, because when I am active, I do see a direct correlation in leads.
Yeah,
it's
100%.
pretty crazy how much you can generate from simple posts. So that's the biggest thing is Instagram, in the store, website. I'm around.
You got a phone number?
I do.
What's your phone number, Jesse? Throw it out there for those that text.
Well, I don't know that I want to give my personal cell phone number out
Well,
here.
then don't. Then don't give your personal cell phone.
But
you got an office phone number, right?
you can reach me at the store, 610-886-1000.
Okay, fantastic.
Ask for Jesse.
Ask for Jesse. Jesse or RDS Jesse?
Just Jesse.
Just Jesse.
I'm only RDS Jesse on the internet.
Okay. All right. I'm at Kirk Simmon everywhere.
There you go.
All the time.
Yes.
My mom loves it.
Yeah. There you go.
But thanks for coming, man.
Of course.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, it's been fun.